Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. This is the Daily Medicine Transmission for Patriots Day, April 19th, 2021. So this is Patriots Day because in 1775, on this date, was the shot heard round the world. It was the beginning of the Revolutionary War in the United States. So I would encourage you as an American citizen, or not, but definitely as an American citizen, to familiarize yourself with Patriots Day and the shot heard round the world and what happened in Lexington, because it's important to understand our history and where we come from so we can understand where we are now and how to move forward. So welcome. It is Monday. I hope everyone had a great weekend. Oh, wow. It was so beautiful and enlightening in a lot of ways. The Sun and Mercury came into a conjunction yesterday at the very last degree of Aries and now are traveling into Taurus together today. We're going to look at the chart. Our moon is in Cancer today. So for as much as the brilliant realizations and the ideas and the connections that are being made with our everyone around us and the potential that it all holds, it is now coming into substantiation with the movement into Taurus today. But it certainly will not come without its challenges, that is for sure. And our moon is still in Cancer today and is going to be in an opposition to Pluto. And so there will be some tests. And for as much as we have gained over the weekend, the realizations, the downloads of our potential to really be able to creatively imagine what is possible. You know, there is no real there's no real barrier to what we can achieve when we are in Aries time. But as it comes into Taurus, this is where we are embedded in the medium of our growth, and it will require patience and determination and allowance, right? The allowance of the process to unfold naturally. And so there will be some challenges today, and that is reflected very strongly in today's intuitive reading. So this transmission ultimately is showing us the swift realizations that come about as a result of maybe having to be very sensitive to these painful realizations as well. But it's not going to be without a basis in a creative perspective that came about over the weekend. So if you want to check out the astrology for this week, for the second lunar quarter, because tomorrow is the first quarter square of the sun and moon since our new moon in Aries, 0 degrees Taurus, 0 degrees Leo with the moon. Ooh, boy, the blood rushing to the head. Because not only is it going to square the sun, the moon in Leo will square Mercury in Taurus. It'll square Venus in Taurus. It will square Uranus in Taurus as well. So there's going to be a lot of fixed square energy with this Leo moon tomorrow. So if you want to check that out, you can go to the subscribe star link in the description box below, and you can access the weekly astrology from that platform. It is publicly available, and if you choose to support Catalyst Energies through Subscribestar, it is so much appreciated. You can also go to BitChute as well, and the weekly astrology is there as well. So welcome back to my subscribers and all of my regular viewers. Truly, you are the lifeblood of this channel. There would be really no reason for me to be here if not to share and build community with you all. If you're new to this channel, welcome. Remember, when you interact with this content in any way, subscriptions, hit that like button. When you comment, when you share, it informs the AI algorithm that this content is worth spreading out to a wider audience. So that is another way that you can support this channel. So thank you so much. And one last thing before we get started. Serena, if you are listening, I got your email, and I swear that I'm going to be addressing your questions directly today. I have very strict boundaries about not working with clients or at all over the weekend. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to you and let you know I have not forgotten about you. I've gotten your message, and I will be addressing you directly today. So never fear. It's going to be okay. And that's, you know what I'm talking about. So it's going to be okay. So let's look at the astrology for today. We're going to look at the chart. We have some Also some fixed square energy, or fixed star energy we're going to talk about. I'm really enjoying bringing that element into the dailies. Again, it's just another layer that we put into this beautiful mandala that astrology really represents, this fourth dimensional modality that allows us to move through time, from a fixed point and be conscious co-creators as the timelines emerge. This is what astrology is so wonderfully potent for. So let's look at today's chart, shall we? All right. Here we go. Today, April 19th, like I said, it is Patriots Day. Happy Patriots Day. And our moon is in Cancer. It is at home. She is at home in Cancer. She is held. She is nurtured. She is protected. Our emotional vulnerability, our subconscious realm, our emotional feeling-based landscape has the lattice structure of the familial matrix, the ties emotional ties that bind us, to hold us and protect us. Cancer is the chariot in the tarot. It is the holy grail, as it were. It is the womb and the vessel that holds and nurtures our character as it develops. The fourth house is really where we start to develop our character. So she is powerful here. She is secure here. It allows us to go much deeper intuitively and psychically when the moon is in Cancer. Now, the other side of that is that we also feel very secure, and to the point where we may feel a little too secure, and when the moon moves into Leo tomorrow, 2:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, that means it'll be tonight on the west coast of the United States. The moon will move into Leo and very soon after come into that square with a Taurus sun. So it's important to recognize and value this lattice structure of our familial bonds, of the core and the root structure that holds us to who we are and allows us to draw on our personal power, because we are protected by this vessel and this womb archetype, as it were. So she's going to be, there's a couple there will be issues, I assure you, an opposition to Pluto today, at the same time that there is a Quincunx, a 150-degree angle, as you will see. There's also going to be Quincunx there was a Quincunx with Pluto and Mars over the weekend as well. I talked about that in the astrological report. Again, that is something that you can check out very easily and gives you all of the aspects to consider as we move through the week. So before we get into the moon transits, let's bring some attention to some major shifts that have happened. And Uranus has moved into the next degree of Taurus. Chiron has moved into the next degree of Aries. Neptune has moved into the next degree of Pisces. These are large, slow-moving bodies. You have planets with Uranus and Neptune, these transpersonal planets, and Chiron as the asteroid. They all have very slow-moving orbits around our sun. And so when they move to the next degree, you really feel the shift in the archetypal resonance of the degree that they're in. So as Uranus now has moved into the 10th to 11th degree of Taurus, we are really now focusing, the path of our awakening is cultivating the garden of our own minds, our own collective mind, our collective third eye that Uranus represents. Chiron now in the 10th to 11th degree of Aries. And, they are traveling together in this semi-sextile where there's a very subtle opportunity of connection very consistently as they travel together that isn't often right on the surface. It's a 30-degree angle, so that it's very balanced, it's very structurally sound, but it's subtle. It's not right on the surface. And so they've been traveling together in this semi-sextile for quite a while now. So something to consider as we look at these objects and these bodies, these celestial bodies, as they move through the sky. Chiron now in Aries, now moving into the second decan. See, they are now moving into the next 10 degrees of their sign. So this also has a particular archetypal resonance as well. We are, as I said, the cultivation aspect. We are focusing now on the second decan of Taurus is ruled by the moon, which is in her exaltation, right? In Taurus, it's a place where the moon feels powerful. So we are now focusing, what can we do with this substantiation? How do we consciously interact with this very pure and uncontaminated natural fulfillment that Taurus really represents? Well, the path of our awakening is usually fraught with all kinds of crises and psychological crises and transformations that come about as a result of disruption and radical change. So as things are moving, lots of volcanoes, lots of earthquakes, as you'll see, the Schumann really amplified over the weekend and into today. And I'm going to show you a graphic of that in a little bit. It's really about, what are we doing to cultivate the develop of our own ego consciousness? And when I say ego consciousness, we can't get triggered by that word ego, right? It is a very natural part of the human psyche to have an ego. And in fact, this is what the Aries archetype represents. There is no individuation without an ego consciousness to start with. So it's about, what are we doing with our own consciousness? And over the weekend, and even from the new moon, we have started to really work with what is embedded within us. What is the potential we all individually hold to fulfill ourselves and to create something new? We all have that potential within us. Uranus is going to be shaking up, as usual, these foundations, and it is going to be triggering an awakening process in the direction of, how do we cultivate, right? A woman watering flowers in her garden. We have to take the initiative to give the nourishment to the soil. We have to take the initiative to water the plants and the flowers. We have to be part of the process. Our ego consciousness has to be part of the process. Now, Chiron at the 11th degree, 10 to 11th degree of Aries, this is when that I am ego consciousness is really trying to centralize and give at least a form, if anything, just a centralization to what otherwise are just reactions, right? Just reactions, biological reactions, instinctual reactions. Now with Chiron here in this position, there is some pushback here. There is a wounding here and an awareness of the victimhood that gets triggered when we attempt to do this, right? And this, I think, is very much connected to that trigger about the ego that has been embedded in much of the New Age spiritual community and modalities of how we want to bypass the ego. If you are not familiar with Matt Kahn's work, I would really recommend listening to any of his transmissions, especially that talk about this, because he just has a beautiful way of conveying this information about the ego and how it's really a part of ourselves that needs to be nurtured and acknowledged for what it is. And Chiron here at this, as we are attempting now to find this centralization and to utilize our ego consciousness as a way to give a structure in some ways to otherwise just these I wouldn't say random, but reactionary positions. It triggers us, right? We don't want to have an ego. We don't think we should have an ego. There's an identity that we should let go of that ego. And Chiron, again, this dance with Uranus and Taurus, this semi-sextile, so fascinating. We do have to cultivate the ego consciousness in a way that we want it to bloom, right? We can't just be, we just can't be a passive we have to participate, right? We can't just be passive and then expect all of it to come about in the way that we want to our highest potential. So there is a very subtle, if not, kind of hidden under the surface potential here with Chiron and Uranus. So, those two have now shifted. Neptune is now shifted into the next degree. This is giving ourselves to something very substantial when it's now moved into the 23rd degree of Pisces. It's the ability to give of our own vital energy to substantiate one's conscious ideals. Neptune and Pisces. Neptune is the great dissolver in its home sign of Pisces. Incredibly powerful. This is about substantiation from a collective perspective, from a transcendental perspective. It's about a materializing medium giving a seance, right? When the medium gives us a seance, and if you've ever been around anybody who is been a very strong channeler, right? Or you yourself have been involved in this type of work before, it can really wear you out. You become the vessel. And so something precious involved in a very deeply personal experience has to be surrendered. And I shared on Friday's transmission my own experience of this. And a lot of it is an old identity, past life trauma or early life trauma, for instance, especially with Chiron, right? To let go of what has been in order to substantiate these ideals or unconscious desires. I mean, that's the dark side of this particular degree. So there is a lot of shifting in the sky right now in these large transpersonal energies. We do see that the sun currently is in the last degree of Aries still, and will soon move into Taurus today. Venus is in Taurus as well. And the sun or the moon is going to, look at this, in a trine to Neptune today. This is very fascinating because this particular degree is where the sun or the moon, I keep wanting to say the sun because it's such a strong part of the intuitive message today, as we'll see. The moon is also in a conjunction with fixed star Pollux. We're going to talk about that. And Procyon as well in this trine to Neptune. And as we become more confident, as we become more sure of ourselves with a moon in Cancer emotionally, this degree in particular is about the individuals that are on the cutting edge in some ways. So if you have this degree in your chart, 23 degrees Cancer, and I will say that it is my it is my black moon Lilith. So wow. If you do have this degree, it's the Sabian symbol is the meeting of a literary society, and it's an objective and critical approach to the common factors in our culture and the psychological problems that go along with it. And so these individuals, the poets, the novelists, the literary people, right? The writers. It's having an objective mind, but an emotional participation at the same time, right? Because there's an art form to being a poet, being a writer, right? Being a critic in some ways. And these individuals and this symbol makes concrete to what most people may be a subconscious aspiration. They don't even know. And one of the things that stuck out about this symbol in my research is that these individuals and the archetype that it represents, barometers, right? Where's Saturn right now in Aquarius, 13 degrees Aquarius, barometer, right? And so this moon in a trine to Neptune, what is a trine? It's a very structurally sound connection. It really doesn't require much, but it doesn't create any tension either. When we can give of our all, right? We can surrender something deeply personal in order to substantiate some kind of ideal, right, in this process. And the moon being our own personal, intuitive experience as it moves along, as we feel it in our emotional body, we can embody that substantiation that Neptune is representing, in that we can hold the objective approach towards and critical analysis in some ways of what is the problems that we are dealing with as a society, so we can move forward and visualize it. Neptune is really supporting our lunar capacity, the internal psychic, intuitive capacity that the moon represents, to see where we're going, and to give a form and a structure to these problems from a critical, analytical perspective. So as we move forward today, the challenges are going to be here because we're going to have to mentally deal with, like I said, this critical analysis, this critical approach, the critique. But at the same time, it's Neptune is allowing for the dissolution of everything else into this process, and we will be able to embody it individually and intuitively Excuse me 1 second. Thank you. So this is a really strong transit, and as the moon today moves through here, we're gonna let's start looking at these fixed stars. So then at the same time here, the moon will also be in a conjunction with fixed star Pollux, as you can see, is in the head of the twin, the southern twin in Gemini as well. And then right after is in a position to Procyon, which is in Canis Minor, the little dog. And so let's talk about that, because each of these fixed stars has some really strong things connected to it. So Pollux is one of the Gemini twins, and in this particular fixed star gives a really subtle and crafty nature. It's very spirited, it's very brave and audacious, but it can be rash and it can be cruel, and there can be a dignified malevolence to it, right? It really depends on how you're looking at it. And again, you can start to wrap your mind around this in terms of the critique, right? It can be subtle and crafty and audacious, but if you are not able to see this for what it is, it can be very cruel and it can be very rash, and you can be very judgmental in some ways. And there's a love of boxing. This particular fixed star and the archetype of Pollux in the Gemini constellation is a boxer. And so there's a nature of Mars attached to this as well. And then as it comes around and we look at fixed star Procyon, which is pretty much at the same degree in terms of its longitude, but is in a different constellation. That means it's in probably a different latitude. We look at Procyon, and this is the neighbor to Sirius. And I talked about this in the astrological report as the moon crossed Sirius over the weekend. Fixed star Sirius, the brightest star in our sky, Syrian Starseed activation. So this particular fixed star, as we see, is in down here in Canis Minor, the little dog, is sometimes called the Northern Sirius. And is of the nature of Mercury. So you have these two Mars and Mercury natures where the moon is crossing over them pretty much in this trine to Neptune that's really just, dissolving everything into this experience, right? The medium completely goes away. The channel consciousness completely steps back and allows for a total surrender to the process of substantiation. So when the moon is crossing these two fixed stars at the same time, it could go either way, right? It could be subtle and crafty and audacious and really give this spirited and brave energy to this process as we critique the things that most people don't even see, or they subconsciously can only connect to, right? In the dream states, very specifically, how are your dreams, especially the moon in Cancer trine Neptune and Pisces. These are some very substantial energies in terms of dream state and the transcendental reality, but also coming to meet Procyon of the nature of Mercury, called the Northern Sirius. So the navigator and the steersman on the Argo. So if you're familiar with, the story of Jason and the Argonauts, what were they searching for? The golden fleece, the quest for the true knowledge, the gold of the alchemist. And it's the knowledge of our origins, what happened to make us who we are now, the knowledge which we have always felt so deep down, and will allow us to heal and take us forward, right? That's what we're doing. There is a new energy emerging, and it came through with Mercury and the Sun coming together in that last degree of Aries, bringing us to the reality that for all of the potential that we hold, it does come into a substantiated form and has to embed itself in some material reality in order to to be realized. And this is the magician. Oh my God, Sun and Mercury coming together in Aries. This is the magician. Our inner magician is really strong and coming forward, but it has to have a basis in material reality to even mean anything. So Procyon too. So the dark side of this can make people hasty and jealous. pig-headed, but it also confers some manner of willpower, right? That's a very Cancerian energy, and its ability to put thoughts and plans into action. So there's like a hot temper, but also a rise and success are found with it. So it's about balancing all of this energy. So anything that's created in haste, right, without, being substantiated and embedded in a healthy medium of growth, is not going to last. And this is something, again, to consider as the moon crosses these points, is in a trine to Neptune. So whatever it is that we want to substantiate, either unconsciously or unconsciously, it's going to have a lot to do with where our intuitive calibration really is. So if it's created in haste, it's not going to last. And people who want to go through the wall with their head, right, are just going to hurt themselves. We have to embody that energy of the metal ox that this whole year is holding, of this determination and this patience for the natural growth. So there's a drive and a sharp mind here, again, with this moon at the 23 degrees of Cancer, right? The critique. And so there's a lot of success that can be made even greater, but you have to be careful if you want to avoid a shit show, basically. So this is really challenging us because we have to come to terms with some manner of defeat, as we're going to see in the intuitive message. So here's Canis Minor. I definitely dreamt of dogs last night as well. And so there's a lot of this. And remember, dogs in Canis Major and Sirius as the dog star. This Cancerian is loyal, right? Dogs are loyal, unconditionally loyal. They are pack animals. They are completely empathic. And so you can utilize that imagery of that particular animal to really kind of wrap your head around what some of these energies are really representing. So let's see what else we got here today. Now, like I said, the sun is conjunct Taurus, the moon opposing Pluto, and Quincunx Jupiter. So Jupiter is really expanding on these traditions that hold our most delicate feelings, right? Again, it goes back. Aquarius is the water bearer, holding the water for the collective. The collective is the vessel that the energy of Aquarius holds, right? And so the moon coming into this late degree of Cancer in an opposition to Pluto, these really deep, transformative, powerful energies that Pluto represents, is going to be tugging on our and is going to actually be a confrontation with social upheaval, demanding that we reconsider our values. And so this does represent a challenge to meet a crisis by what is really uncontrollable karmic forces, right? It's a violent storm in a canyon, right? But it could lead to a very successful catharsis. So the moon in a quincunx to Jupiter. Here, let's look at the chart here again. The moon in a quincunx, let's move ahead a couple hours here, is also, going to provide that adjustment period, because Jupiter's really expanding on our ability to go back to some sort of tradition that allows us to interact with this delicacy of our feeling, right? This is what Aquarius at its highest really represents, the cosmic coherence and the traditions that allow for that. It's going to be really challenging, again, to be able to connect to that. And for even as much as Jupiter is this benefactor, it's going to really provide an opportunity to adjust ourselves, because it's going to feel really like a crisis. It's going to feel like a storm within us, moving through us, and in opposition to Pluto as well, that is actually the storm that's coming through, just destroying everything. So there's certainly going to be challenge today through this process. But again, the trine to Neptune and crossing those fixed stars really give us an opportunity of choice and awareness about how we want to move through this energy. And so when we do feel that tension, that we can just kind of hunker down and know that the canyon itself is going to protect us, even though there may be destruction of all of the human-made creations, like all of the expensive homes in the canyon, for instance. Now, the sun Now that the Sun and Mercury are in Taurus at this point, they are crossing fixed star Mirage. If we remember, this is where Venus was not long ago, on the belt of Andromeda, the chained woman. And so this is really where the embedded nature being held, that creative imagination, that brilliant realization that the Sun and Mercury came together, is now moving into, something that's holding us in. That is really what a belt or a girdle, really, this fixed star represents, is the holding in and containment that Taurus represents, the soil and the medium of our growth. And it has to hold us. We can't keep, just allowing our potential to spill out. It has to have, like I said, a material reality in which to embed itself if the magician wants to even substantiate anything. So again, these are energies that have already happened, and now with the Sun, our expression of ourself, and Mercury, the realm of our mind and thoughts and ideas, communication, the movement, it is now finding some sort of embeddedness, taking allowing the soil to cover it, the girdle to hold it, and allowing the natural processes to interact with this stillness and this the darkness in the soil. So that's really the astrology for today. Tomorrow, like I said, we're going to come into the square with all of this Taurus energy. So we're going to come to a swift realization, even in some sort of opposition in some ways to what we're coming, these painful realizations as a result of this shift in consciousness, right? And we are going to want to express ourselves. The emotional drive to express ourselves is going to be bumping up against all of this Taurus. And fixed square energy is really difficult, right? There's not a lot of mutability here. There's not a lot of momentum here. It's just fixed. And so when they bump heads and when they are T-boning each other, so to speak, then it can be just really, it can just feel really stubborn, right? Especially all the Taurus energy. That is a very stubborn energy. So something to keep in mind, and we'll talk a lot more about that on tomorrow's transmission. So let's see here. We are going to move now. We're going to move over this way, and we are going to look at today's reading, shall we? All right. So like I said, the Sun is coming into this moment, but then we find I'm just swatting at these weird gnats that are now coming out of nowhere because it is spring and, everything is waking up. So we are seeing that there is Five of Swords is not an easy energy. The swords are already so difficult to work with because they cut. You know what I mean? They cut down to the bone. And the Five of Swords is defeat. Right? This is and Venus in Aquarius, there is a sense of there's sensitivity to something that we can't get around, the sharp pain that no reasonable argument is going to soften. And there is a crisis here, an intellectual crisis as well. But we do see that the axis of our power, that vertical axis, the spinal cord that holds that energy that moves within us. There is a lot here that can really balance us and is going to, we got to let in this higher sense of self, and it's going to come a knocking. All right. And it's our awareness. And as a result, there's going to be a swift realization, very swift realization. By the end of today, coming into this first quarter square, which is going to happen by the end of today, and very early tomorrow morning as we move east across the continent, the North American continent. So let's look here. Each piece, one step at a time here. All right, the Sun. The Sun, number 19, joy of life, creativity, right? Power always given generously without really diminishing itself. A star, and the Sun is our star. And just like all other stars, the main sequence of a star is its active life cycle when it is emitting energy as a result of nuclear fusion. So it gives generously. It's never diminishing itself by giving fully of itself. And so there's vitality, there's optimism. This is really a big part of this weekend. I think there was a lot of aha moments. There was a lot of creative realizations and brilliant discoveries that came through the mind and through our expression and the blossoming of our nature. And so some things really got let go of that were like, whoa, I never thought about it that way before. And whoa, look at all the potential we have to actually create the reality we want, because that's where it's really going to come from. Okay. This week is going to challenge that. And it's going to start with this first quarter square happening tomorrow or late tonight, this crisis in action. But the causal factor coming into this moment is the sun, the blossoming of our nature. And when you break this down numerologically, number 19, 1 plus 9 is 10. The Wheel of Fortune, Jupiter. You break that down even further, 1 plus 0. What is that? The Magician, right? Number 1. And so this breaks down into that mercurial aspect of manifestation, but it comes through the energy and the radiance of the blossoming of who we are. Okay, so this is beautiful energy coming into the moment, the Sun and Mercury in a conjunction at the last degree of Aries as our causal factor. Now, in the heart of us, the heart of the moment, we have the defeat, right? We have the 5 of Swords, Venus in Aquarius. So you see all of this chaos pattern. It's really disjointed, all surrounding it. But then you have these swords, and they are bending. They are not breaking. They are bending, and they're coming to a point in the middle where they can't maintain their linear and stiff composure. They are, as a result of coming to this point of realization, they have to bend. Otherwise, they will break. And something to consider is that this sword, you can even see a notch right out of it in the middle here. And is also, the energy is moving down in this pentacle. It's really a pentagram. And so then you can relate it to a Capricornian aspect. And Venus, of course, rules Taurus. So it's also materialized. And Venus represents our sensitivity because it's our senses. It's our human senses, our physical material senses. And so too much sensitivity is a sharp pain that no reasonable argument is going to soften. So we are going to have an intellectual crisis, because what this brilliant realization that coming into the moment represents will have to bump up against some things. And so we do realize our limitations and our restrictions here. And the defeat that represents in a mental perspective. And here we are with the moon at Cancer, the meeting of the literary society, the critique, the critical analysis that the poets and the novelists and the critics and those who are artistically inspired are able to really kind of voice and objectify more so than the common person. And so that in itself can be a sharp pain coming to those conclusions as well. And so there will be aspects that will challenge us today in feeling a sense of defeat. Now, where are we able to be energetically rooted? Well, finally, the 7 of Forces is upright. It's been a while, hasn't it? And so there is harmony, there is justice. All the systems in our body seek balance, right? And regardless of what we choose to do to our body or our energetic system, it is the nature of the universe, homeostasis, right? We have entropy, right? We have chaos, but it always stimulates this search for balance, for homeostasis. So be patient and pay attention to the details. This is where we are rooted energetically here in this balance. Justice is at hand. And if we can root ourselves, if we can stabilize ourselves energetically to this perspective, the issues are going to start coming to light, and justice will come about. Justice is at hand, but we have to energetically be rooted in this balance in order for that to be the case. Now, as we see here, this is where we are rooted. We move up through the Five of Swords at the heart of the matter, as I showed you before. So we're feeling a sense of intellectual defeat, limitation. We're sensitive to it, and it doesn't feel good, and it can really cut. It can really, really cut when we come to this awareness. And then as it moves up through the higher chakras and opens the crown, here's the light of the world, right? Here's our higher self knocking at the door. So if we are rooted in a sense of balance, that justice is at hand, that we are patient and paying attention to the details to allow this balance to unfold within us. And when we meet the heart of the matter of the defeat, then what we have the option and the potential to do is answer the door of our higher self. Okay, it's going to come a knocking, and we can't really see it for what it is if we are not balanced at our core. That's really what's coming in. So again, number 10, that wheel of fortune, right? That breaks down to the magician. And so you might not necessarily, this is again, you see where that moon is in a quincunx to Jupiter, right? The wheel of fortune is number 10, ruled by Jupiter. We may not necessarily anticipate this knock, but it will provide some measure of adjustment when this tension with Pluto and the storm raging through the canyon, this is really the knock of our higher self going, hey, open the door, because what you think is this defeat, and you might feel it, is really this emergence and a opening. If we choose to see it that way, if we are paying attention, some ways that we can do this is to take real and regular action to create this bond. Meditation, study of spiritual texts, or anything inspiring, and prayer, those kinds of practices. And you can make every single day, every single moment sacred by taking the time to go within. When you do this, then you are way more in tune and attuned to this knocking, okay? And the balance, again, is where we need to be rooted. And as we see as the outcome here, what to expect is this Mercury in Sagittarius, this 8 of Wands. It's a very swift realization. Decisive action is going to be needed because of these sun realizations as well. Remember, Sagittarius is a fire sign, and so there is action behind it. Mercury, of course, is the realm of the mind. So Mercury in Sagittarius is actually at its detriment. So because it's in the sign opposite of its rulership. And so it's not necessarily at its most powerful. But if we recognize that and are aware of that, then we can allow the swiftness of these realizations to emanate out in this forcefulness very, graciously. And you see here that we have this rainbow. So there's a bridge here. There's a link between material and the matter and the spirit as well, as a result of this outward expansion of this realization, the 8 of Wands, right? This is a action-oriented card. And so there will be a swift and sudden realization that will require us to be, again, we have to be able to hear our higher self knocking. And if we can do that, then these swift realizations are going to come in, and we're going to ride this rainbow bridge, so to speak, and see it for what it is and not be taken off course by it or miss it entirely. That's the other thing. If we miss it entirely, then, we got to wait for the next opportunity to come back around. So there is some guidance here on our way. So one thing I want to show you. So number 14, initiation and the Count of Saint Germain. So with it reversed, with the balance, this is really about if we're struggling here with this energy of feeling balanced at the core, that really knowing that justice is here and holding that in the core of our being. We're holding on to old ways. We're resisting our own initiation in some ways. And if you're feeling this way, you're staying in this low vibrational situation. You're staying in these low vibrational relationships. And this can be very material and physical. This can be not acknowledging these past life or early life traumas that are keeping you stuck in a trauma loop, right? When you when you realize this, and this is why things like QHHT, quantum hypnosis healing technique, or any kind of past life regression, any kind of shamanic journeying, these types of modalities allow us to journey into these types of spaces, different lifetimes in, outside of the 3D in order to see what we're still holding in our energetic field. It's holding us back from our own initiation by not letting go of these aspects, okay? And we have to confront it. We do. We're not going to be rooted in balance within us if we do not confront that which is holding us back from this initiation. And it could be something as really simple as your mindset and the inner dialogue that you have with yourself about what you identify as your enemy, what you identify outside of yourself as holding you back. You have to confront what it is within you that keeps bringing that to your awareness and find a way to resolve it. So if we're struggling with the balance part, remember that this initiation is about letting go of that which has kept us vibrating at a lower frequency. And that's not a judgment. That's just an objective observation. A lower frequency is a larger wavelength of electromagnetic energy, right? And it's not good or bad or evil or good. It just is. And if we want to ascend, we have to address those things. If we want to vibrate at a higher frequency, we can't keep allowing situations and mindsets and emotional states that are at a lower frequency to keep operating in our field. And one way we can do this is the panda is saying, create a sacred space for yourself, a spiritual sanctuary, whatever that is. A place where you can go so you can closely listen to your inner voice, because when you're able to do that, you get insight, you get omens, you get synchronicities, you get guidance in order how to take decisive action, because that's what this Seven of Forces. It's not a passive energy. Forces are the wands, it's the fire, it's the creative element. So when you take action, even being in stillness, it's a very Buddhist thing. Don't just do nothing, sit there, right? It seems counterintuitive, but when you realize that sitting in meditation, sitting in prayer and letting go of all of the other stuff and allowing yourself to just be is going to let all of the chatter settle, and then you will be able to access your inner guidance a lot easier. And when you do that, you are able to see the things that you need to let go of. This is going to be really important this week, because we're going to keep getting challenged as we lead up to the full moon that is absolutely going to show us what it is that keeps disturbing our emotional stillness in order to get a very deep sense of ourselves. Really. And so the panda is, giving us that, that message to create that space, either physical, time-wise, in your own mind even, take some breaks from things, It doesn't mean that you are any less effective if you do that. In fact, that's the way. We've been talking about this. There are many other spiritual teachers and channelers have been talking that this is the way. We have to bring about a higher vibration within each of us if we want to start manifesting reality that matches that. And there's a reason why we keep seeing this. But I will say, and this is something that's been corroborated by other people, that I listen to, also channeling, like Daniel Scranton, for instance. One of the things he said very recently too, that I totally have been feeling myself, is that everything you're seeing, they're losing their grip, those who want to be in control. But each of us has that. Each of us has that nature within us of wanting to keep control. And so that is slipping away day by day as the collective is awakening to their potential and to their higher potential and their higher calling. So that's also a way to think about it. So speaking of which, use your intuition and your intellect. it's using your reason and your gut. You don't want, it's bringing these two aspects together to really get answers. And this is creative intelligence. So when we are struggling with allowing in our higher self, allowing in that aspect that connects us to source, which is the higher self, it's about using our intuition and our intellect, balancing these forces, just like the Seven of Forces, the balance, right? Reasoning and gut feeling. We don't want to leave out our minds entirely, but we don't want to completely discount our own gut feeling. And believe me, I've done this many times now, and hindsight is 20/20. So be easy on yourselves, but go look back at the times that you've ignored your own intuition because it didn't fit a narrative that you wanted to believe, right? Check your gut and then let that come through the vessel of your mind and realize that, you can see here where you've been holding yourself back and where you have been distracted by not letting in your higher self. Now, the winged messenger in a reversal here is, as you see here, this winged messenger, this is obviously upright. So there's already the Two of Roses, the conflict, right? When it is reversed, the conflict is growing. It's growing. And I just said this, it's growing. What is that showing us? It's showing us that control is slipping away from those who are trying to grasp it. And it's important to know when to step away from the conflict and which conflict to step away from when it's reversed. Okay, use your intellect and your reasoning, your gut and your mind, right, in order to allow your higher self in. So the power of your spirit is your foundation. Oh, look at that. Right here. And your power of your spirit is able to anchor you. You have to be able to balance these aspects. And like I said, you have to know when to hold them and you have to know when to fold them. And some conflicts they're growing and they're growing. And if you stay attached to the growing of that conflict, that's all you're going to keep seeing. That's what's going to be in your reality. And you're just going to be in this perpetual state of panic, this perpetual state of anger, this perpetual state of blame. Right? You got to know when to walk away and which conflicts to walk away from. Now, there are some things that you have to have yourself completely intact if you want to address certain really, really important issues. And it's really going to be about holding the space for these realizations to come in. You can't do that if you're embedded in all of these challenges or these conflicts that are really just there to give us a lesson, give us information. Again, the chimpanzee, use your intellect and your intuition rather than getting pulled into the drama of the conflict. See it for what it is, which is an opportunity to let that higher self come into the picture. So guys, that's the transmission for today. It's going to be an interesting week. And I talked about that in the astrology report. It's time to put our money where our mouth is. Also, to consider that Mars is coming into a conjunction with Betelgeuse as well, and Alcyon eventually, or not Alcyon. Sorry, that's. Let me look at it real quick. There's just too much. Polaris, that's right, coming into a conjunction with Polaris and Betelgeuse. And so Mars will have that, will have a way shower, right? It'll have the guiding light of the North Star. It'll have the incredible power of Betelgeuse. It's the largest star that we know about. It's massive. It's also dying as far as I can tell, right? Because it's shrinking. And that's that's a sign that the star is now past its main sequence. So challenges ahead, my friends, but this is all about getting us up to speed. And today is really about addressing the sensitivity that those intellectual crisis brings about. But we also are going to have some really incredible realizations as a result. So thank you so much for being here. If you're interested in a reading or energetic support through Reiki or shamanic energy work, you can book through catalystenergies.net. That is in the description box below. You can follow us on Telegram or Facebook. That is also in the description box below. I love you. I appreciate every single one of you. I hope that you are doing well. We will connect again tomorrow for the daily medicine transmission on the first quarter square of the sun and moon and officially enter the second lunar quarter of this cycle. I love you guys. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.